Aloha, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to another week of Trauma Recovery University. I am your host, Athena Moberg, and with us in the green room is your incredible co-host, Bobby Parrish. And are you in the right place? Who are you and who are we? We are adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse, and we come here every single week, Bobby Parrish and myself, and we do live Q&A for the adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse community. Our community has grown. It has grown immensely and exponentially just over the past month, actually. We're in I think it's 180 something countries, and you guys are amazing, that you guys who show up here every single week, and all of you that watch the replays, and we just want to say thank you, and we are so humbled. We have so many of you in our virtual safe groups, and it is an honor to be here with you answering your questions. We show up here every single week for live Q&A every single Monday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Every week we have a different topic. This week's topic is enmeshment. Enmeshed relationships. That's what we're going to be discussing tonight. What is enmeshment? How does enmeshment or enmeshed relationships, how do they differ from codependent relationships? Are they the same? What are the differences? Am I in an enmeshed relationship? What do I have enmeshed qualities in the relationships that I have now as an adult? Are enmeshed relationships only during your family of origin and during your childhood? What do they look like? What are the qualities? What are some healthy things that I can do now if I am in an enmeshed relationship so that I can develop healthier relational and interpersonal skills so that I can move on in my life and have healthy relationships, healthy boundaries, have joy, have peace, not feel obligated all of the time, not feel manipulated and stressed out. These are all some questions and some things that we are going to be discussing tonight. This is going to be a very lively conversation. Our chat this morning, we have 3 Twitter chats a week that we participate in or help facilitate. This is the second of the 3. This morning, every single Monday, 10 p.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, which is 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, that chat was originally created for our growing audience in the UK. So 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time every single Monday, and the topic is usually the same all throughout the week. The second Twitter chat is this one that you're at right now with a video component here on our Roku TV channel or our YouTube channel. And that is hashtag no more shame. The chat in the mornings, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. That chat is called Child Sexual Abuse Question Time, and it's hashtag CSAQT. The third Twitter chat is actually the original Twitter chat for the sexual abuse survivor community, which was started by our very own Bobby Parrish and Rachel Thompson of rachelintheoc.com. So that is at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern every single Tuesday. We have this global community of adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse that all show up to support one another. We show up to say, hi, how was your week? How can I best support you? Oh, you're having a hard day. I'm sending you virtual cookies and tea and just anything. We just show up to support one another. Sometimes people are having really bad days. Sometimes they're having great days. Today happens to be a much better day than normal for me personally, and that might not be the case with some of you who are showing up here live on our Twitter chat. So if you are an adult survivor of childhood sexual abuse and you have some questions regarding the topic of enmeshment, go ahead and leave those down below here in the chat on YouTube or Roku TV, or we would love if you would go to Twitter and you would tweet out your questions using the hashtag #NoMoreShame so that we can answer your questions here live. And as a thank you for being a loyal listener, viewer, subscriber, or as we say, just an awesome survivor, we would love to give you complimentary access to our weekly downloadable one-page PDF resource. Every single week, there are hundreds of them over there on our websites. We show up here and we do a one-page downloadable resource. It's kind of a a synopsis or a blog post, if you will. And you can get access complimentary to the entire library of downloadable one-page resources, and specifically tonight's, which is on the topic of enmeshed relationships or enmeshment. And you can get access to that by going to one of our websites, nomoreshameproject.com or traumarecoveryuniversity.com. So without further ado, I am going to hand this over to my your co-host, Bobby Parrish, and I'll go ahead and take the Twitter feed from you, Bobby. And if you guys have questions, please tweet us using the hashtag #NoMoreShame. And we just want to say thank you for being here, and thank you for letting us know that you're receiving the resources and that you're finding them helpful. We appreciate you guys so much. Take it away, Bobby.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to see you this week. It's always an honor when you spend an hour or more of your time with us. And so I'm grateful. Before we go any further, I want to issue a big old trigger warning. This is a podcast, video, Twitter chat that discusses childhood abuse, and specifically sometimes childhood sexual abuse. So we want to make sure that you're aware of that and that you practice excellent self-care while you're participating. If you become triggered, please don't hesitate to just leave the chat, to shut the video down and walk away. Well, we want to be here to share information and support and compassion with you. And if you're triggered and you're not feeling well, that's the exact opposite of the result that we want. So just go ahead and walk away. You can watch the replay later. You can pick up where you left off in the video or the podcast at another time when you're feeling better. Or maybe it's just not a topic for you and you want to leave it permanently. Athena and I have now probably about 120, 130 different videos on the YouTube channel, Roku TV. Just pop over and find one that fits better and isn't as triggering for you to watch and listen to. If you are triggered, if you're in crisis or you need help urgently today, tonight, as you're listening, we would love to refer you to, if you're here in the US or Canada, our friends at RAINN. RAINN is the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network that can be reached at 1-800-656-HOPE, HOPE. You can also use their crisis chat feature on their website, and that is RAINN, RAINN.org. You might have to wait a bit. Sometimes there's a line to speak to someone in their crisis chat feature, but they usually give excellent advice, and they can provide you with resources in your area. If you're in the UK, you can reach out to the Samaritans, which is just an incredible organization. In the UK, I've never heard a bad word about them, and they are so accessible. You can reach out to them by phone at 116-123. You can also text them at my sticky's upside down, 0775-909090. That's 0775-909090. You can also email the Samaritans, and you can email them at jo@samaritans.org. If you are in Australia, where we have a growing community of followers, you can reach out to your national crisis hotline at 131114. And as Athena said, tonight we're talking about enmeshment and enmeshed relationships. And this is another one of those topics that people don't usually talk to you about when they're talking about trauma or abuse. I certainly never heard a word about this when I was in recovery. I didn't hear about this until I got into grad school and started studying on how to be a marriage and family therapist. And then we talked about enmeshment. And that's when I went, oh, that's what my family did. I get it now. And so we want to give you the information that you need to see if you can recognize this as something that happened either in your family of origin or in relationships that you have now. Enmeshment is also sometimes that we will see in organizations such as cults. So be aware that it's not something that is specifically geared towards just family type relationships. You can also see it in organizations, marriages, and even friendships sometimes. And we're also going to talk the primary question that we're getting, and that we've seen both today in the Twitter chat and already here on the Twitter feed, is what's the difference between codependency and enmeshment? So let's answer that one really quick and kind of get that out of the way. Codependency is when, the word co means with, and dependency means dependent. So it can mean that you are dependent on someone else for your emotional well-being. A relationship can be codependent. Families can have codependency, but codependency can be what they call unidirectional, one way. So Joe can be codependent on Mary, but Mary is not codependent on Joe. Oftentimes you'll see this in relationships where one of the partners has a substance addiction or any kind of another addiction, where you are enabling this person to continue to engage in their abusive relationship because you're dependent upon their well-being for you yourself to feel good. Sometimes, so that's a unidirectional, so it's one person being codependent on another. And sometimes it can be bidirectional, that people can be dependent on one another. But it is not the deeply rooted kind of thing that you'll see in enmeshment, okay? Enmeshment is bidirectional, multidirectional, okay? So you can't have one person enmeshed with another. That's defies the definition of enmeshment, which means en means into, and meshment literally like this. So enmeshed relationships are ones where the people are so tangled together that there is not a separate identity. There's no more Mary, John, Joe, mom and dad. It's the Smith family. And they're taught to move as a unit under the control of whoever is the head of that relationship. Sometimes the father, sometimes the mother, sometimes a sibling, sometimes a grandparent, whoever it is that has control. That's how the family unit moves. So codependency is there's less entanglement, and it can be unidirectional. Enmeshment, they are just locked tighter than a drum, and it's multidirectional, meaning it flows through everyone. So I hope that helps, and we'll just keep talking about it a little bit as people have questions. So if you still have questions, tweet them in and let us know what you think. And Athena, do you have anything to add to either the definition of those two, or how they're different, or how they're similar?
Actually, I love the definition that you gave, and we go into pretty good detail on the one page that we did, which part of me wants to jump into the one page a little bit earlier than normal tonight, just because it's so explanatory and in depth, and it's going to probably cause a lot of people to ask even more questions. But I think one of the great ways to know, to answer your question directly, Bobby, I think one of the great ways for us to know if we are in an enmeshed relationship is, a very real example would be either in childhood or adulthood, when you're sort of like the person that arrives home first, and you are waiting for your other family members to arrive home, and you have sort of this anxious feeling in you, like a pit in your stomach, almost like you're walking on eggshells, or sort of nervously anticipating other family members' arrival home, whether it was during childhood or whether it's in adulthood. Off the air, Bobby and I were discussing how this happened during our childhoods, and then it was sort of repeated in our young adulthood in our relationships. And so it almost confirmed and solidified the unhealthy nature of this. And then, so we didn't even know that what we had learned in childhood was actually unhealthy because it was all we had ever known. And we found ourselves sort of, you know, in our young to mid adulthood in our 20s and 30s going, but this is all I've ever known. I didn't know that this was not healthy. So so back to the explanation, let's say you're a child, or you're a young adult, or you're even a middle-aged to an older adult, all the way up to however old you are right now, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, it doesn't matter. If you are the person that's at home, this is a real example, and you're awaiting someone's arrival at home and you have this pit in your stomach, you're sort of walking on eggshells. You want to make sure everything's just right. You're sort of wondering what the temperature of the evening is going to be like when the blank person gets home, whether that's my parents, my brother, my sister, my spouse, whoever it is that you're in an interpersonal relationship with. And I'm describing this in a relationship where you're actually living with someone, because enmeshment often moves quickly from we're not living in the same house to we are living in the same house and doing every single thing together all the time as often as possible. Or we have this rhythm or this cadence that we sort of fall into, and it's not necessarily healthy. So you're at home and you're waiting for this person to arrive home, and you have a pit in your stomach. You have this sort of anticipation of when they're going to walk through the door. You're waiting to hear if the car pulls up or the dog starts to bark down the street, so you know that the car is coming, or you hear the door close, or you hear the garage open. You're sort of waiting and you're sort of anticipating what the temperature of the evening is going to be like when your parent or your sister or your spouse or whoever it is, boyfriend, girlfriend, arrives home, or when they text. And you're sort of wondering like what mood they're going to be in, because that is going to determine your mood and the way the whole mood of everything is going to go. That is, not only is that an element of being in a codependent relationship, but that is like the epitome of being enmeshed. You do not have you. You could be having a super swell, awesome day when you're like, woohoo, I had a great day. I'm adulting and I'm feeling great and I'm awesome. And then all of a sudden, the record scratches and you're like, okay, I think they're home. Okay, I think they're going to be here soon. Okay, I hope everything, okay, I can straighten everything. I make sure everything's perfect. Or wondering like, oh my gosh, like how things are going to go. Like when they walk up the stairs, are they going to be in a bad mood? Are they going to be in a good mood? Because that's going to determine everything, because you no longer exist. Only we exist. You no longer exist. Only we. And that is enmeshment. Bobby, your thoughts on that?
I think that's true. I think we will also see that, you know, that might be characteristic of an abusive relationship or domestic violence as well.
It's one characteristic of,
yes.
Yes. Enmeshment is definitely can be one characteristic of a domestic violence relationship. Or you even, as children, if you grew up in a home that was where the domestic violence was present, you would have seen that behavior that I just described in the adults in your family, and you likely were very uncomfortable, but you sort of adopted that because that's just all you were sort of used to. And it's not always only within abuse, you guys. Like, it could happen in air quotes, healthy families as well. Like, everybody put your Sunday best on. Everybody put your smiles on. We're going to go here together. What do you mean you're not coming with us? You always go with us. We always go for ice cream. That's what we do. I was really good friends with this gal probably about 15 years ago. We worked together. We were super good friends. Her family all went to the same church every Sunday. And then afterwards, they would all go to Taco Bell together. I know it's just Taco Bell, but that was their thing. And if someone didn't show up at Taco Bell, everybody else talked about them and made fun of them and picked on them. And then the whole family would sort of gang up on that one person who didn't show up at Taco Bell, so that person didn't ever not come to Taco Bell ever again. They made sure that they were there because they didn't want to be the one that was talked about. That's enmeshment. Doesn't have to be Taco Bell, doesn't have to be church, but that vibe that I just described to you, that's enmeshment. Bobby?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it would be probably a lesser form of enmeshment. But again, it's an example of how groups can have enmeshment outside of just a family system. You know,
Yeah.
I think that, and I think it's a good idea that we go in and look at the one page because,
I agree.
you know, we talked about, we tried to put on a bunch of different analogies this morning, you know, for people in terms of helping them to understand what enmeshment means. Have you seen that movie, The Emperor's New Groove?
Yes.
Okay.
No touchy, no touchy, no touchy.
Well, there's that scene where the guy and the llama, they're back to back, you know,
yes.
climbing up that
the
chimney,
like
the mountain.
They're climbing up together because they're leaning against one another, and if one of them moves, the other one has to move, otherwise they won't make it to the top.
Exactly. And if one of them were to actually say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, and walk away, the other person's going to fall.
Yes.
And the other person's going to go, well, what the heck's wrong with you? Why did you do that? I need you to do this. And that's it. An enmeshed family is almost like the same thing, except instead of two people, it's the whole family. Everybody's back to back.
Yeah.
And they're all moving in the direction up. They're climbing up according to the direction of the person who's in control of the family system.
Yes.
And like you said earlier, if there's one person who maybe missteps or trips, or there's one person that all of them, you know, the leader has a problem with, that person then becomes the scapegoat. Oh, it's always Susan's problem. It's Susan's problem why we can't make this final 5 steps. You know, if only Susan would. Susan's the bad one. Susan, why can't you get your act together?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and that person becomes scapegoated.
Yeah.
And then they're the holder of so much guilt and so much shame. And it's those of us who were scapegoated that can move into adulthood carrying such an incredible burden of guilt and shame.
And it's hard not to. It's hard not to.
It is, absolutely.
The elements of guilt and shame, Bobby, are very key in keeping enmeshed relationships in place. Guilt and shame.
Yes.
Power, control, guilt, shame.
Right.
Sometimes even age, like the older one type of thing. I don't know if you've seen that movie. I know you're getting ready to pull up the one page. I'm gonna just briefly mention this. Have you seen the movie or read the book Me Before You? It's really hot right now. It's like one of the biggest movies.
Oh, I remember seeing it, but seeing the trailer, but I haven't seen the movie.
Okay, so we rented the movie, interestingly, just as I was doing a whole bunch of research on the topic of enmeshment. And so, of course, as per usual, when you're doing research on a certain topic, you sort of start, like if you started researching silver Volkswagens, then you would start to see silver Volkswagens everywhere you went because it's just something that's been brought to mind. So I was doing research for this week on the topic of enmeshment, and I was watching this movie with my husband, and I'm going, they have an enmeshed family unit. Like the whole family is depending on this one girl. I won't do any spoiler alerts, but I mean, she's sort of the one that everybody depends on to take care of everything. And she's sort of the one that everybody makes fun of. And she's sort of the one that like everybody sort of picks on or sort of puts down. And it's like interesting the role she plays in the family and how the family unit has so many enmeshed qualities. So little extra credit there for you peeps if you wanted to see that movie or watch Emperor's New Groove on Netflix.
Yeah, extra credit. I like that. While I have my hands to talk, I'm going to share just the analogy that we use in the one page, and that's of like a human pyramid. You know, like we all did when we were kids. You know, you get down on the ground on your hands and knees, and somebody kneels on top of you, and then another layer and another layer, and you see cheerleaders do them all the time. That's another example of what an enmeshed family relationship can look like. And it's the people who have the least power who are on the lowest level of the pyramid. And they're the ones that have, you know, 1,000 pounds of someone's knee stabbing them in the back. And they're the ones whose arms feel like they're going to give out. And it's the people at the top who have all the control. And they are also the ones who have the most freedom of movement, right? Because they don't have anybody on their back. They're out there, they're free, they can move back and forth, they can direct people, they can do whatever they want. And if anyone in one of the lower levels, and sometimes it's an enmeshed intergenerational family system. My family growing up was an enmeshed family. My grandparents and all my aunts and uncles all lived in the same small town, all circulated within the same Catholic church, Catholic school system. And you were encouraged to stay within the family, stay in the family, communicate with the family, be part of the family, do family things. And so a pyramid was quite large. You know, we probably had 60 to 75 people in this pyramid. And if someone would collapse, heaven forbid, because they couldn't carry the weight anymore, guess what? Either the whole or part of the pyramid would come tumbling down. And that person would be so punished, whether it was verbal or emotional and sometimes physical abuse. And everyone was guilted, manipulated, coerced into staying in their place. And they had no value, no identity outside of their place in the pyramid. And that's an enmeshed family system. And sometimes you will see the same thing in organizations, cults. I've seen it in, you know, sometimes organizations like sororities and fraternities. I've seen it sometimes in church groups. It's where there's no identity outside of your existence within the pyramid. One person, one or two people have control. Everybody else is holding up the weight of everybody who's above them. So let's look at the one page.
I'm noticing a lot of you guys are tweeting in some questions. One of the questions that was tweeted in, thank you, by the way, for your participation, you guys. One of the questions was, I didn't live with my ex-girlfriend, but I'm noticing the qualities that you're mentioning, and I'm thinking that I may have been in an enmeshed relationship, but we did not live together. Is it possible to be in an enmeshed relationship and not live under the same roof? And the answer is a resounding yes. Absolutely, it is possible. Some family units have their family members living on all corners of the world: New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, San Diego, in the UK, Ireland, Australia, but yet they all function as a unit. And it's a little bit more difficult to be controlled by a relationship that is enmeshed if you're not under the same roof, but it doesn't mean it's impossible.
No, because remember, a lot of the control comes from emotional and verbal manipulation.
Correct. 100% correct. We're gonna, you guys, this one page is so comprehensive and it may be difficult to read because it's just so but we're hoping Bobby is going to read this one page to you like always. And please follow along and tweet in your questions as they come up, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay. So enmeshment is a quality of unhealthy relationships. It is used to control, manipulate, and coerce members of a relationship. When families are enmeshed, members are not allowed to have separate needs, identities, or even emotions of their own. The needs of the family unit are established by those in control. Okay, so as a member of an enmeshed family, you don't get to say, you know, let's set this as a goal for the family. Nope, it's not allowed. The needs, the wants, the goals of the family unit come from the people, the person who's in control. Other members are expected to meet the family's needs or suffer sometimes drastic consequences. Many toxic family systems use enmeshment as a way to facilitate abusive behavior, as abuse is a powerful way to control a family unit. Enmeshment, I'm going to talk about that just for a minute, because enmeshment, you rarely will see family abuse within a family of origin that takes place outside of a family that is not enmeshed, because enmeshment is a setup for the perfect environment to allow abuse to thrive, especially intergenerational family abuse, because enmeshment is all about keeping things in the family. It's all about one person having control. And it's all about the family system running on so much fear and so much coercion that if anyone says 2 words that might be against the family unit, you will see people close ranks like crazy, and you will see that person who said something suffer some enormous verbal and emotional abuse in an effort to keep them quiet. And if they won't stay quiet, if they insist upon, heaven forbid, having needs and a voice of their own, you will see them get tossed out, and the whole family set up almost a smear campaign to disprove why that person, what they're saying, isn't truthful and isn't right. It's almost like a narcissistic family system, because they will do that same thing of, if you don't meet the narcissist's needs, the narcissist will then, tell everyone that there's something wrong with you. And so if we as a survivor of an enmeshed family relationship stand up and point at the family and say, excuse me, but you all are enmeshed, and this is a toxic relationship, they will do everything they can to reduce the likelihood that someone will believe you. And it's also important for them to try to bring you back into the family system. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on here in the 1 page, but I wanted to explain why abuse can absolutely thrive in an enmeshed family, because of the secrecy and the control and the fact that the family exists to meet the needs of those who are in control. And the rest of us just are expected to sacrifice our needs and wants. A good analogy for enmeshment is a human pyramid, where lesser family members are located in the bottom row, holding up the more favorable family members in the rows above them. Every family member is expected to stay in their spot, play their role, and endure any amount of pain and discomfort in order to keep the family pyramid standing. All individuals' needs are to be sacrificed. Okay, you have to sacrifice your need for the good of the family. No member of the pyramid has any power, right, or privilege to do anything for themselves except for those who are on the very top, and those are the people who are in control. Guilt and shame are used along with abuse to keep people in line. You may identify with the terms "let's not make waves," "don't rock the boat," or "don't accept the apple cart." In an enmeshed family unit, Outward appearances are what matter most. The family unit may look talented and perfect to those who see it performing well, but in reality, individual family members are suffering greatly. So you will see that in enmeshed families as well. You'll see that in enmeshment, when there's enmeshment in marriages. They want to portray to other people that there's nothing wrong here, nothing going on here. In fact, everything here is perfect and wonderful. So don't, if someone says something to the contrary, it's not the truth. And I can't tell you how many times I've had survivors tell me, when I tried to speak my truth, everyone looked at me and said, well, that can't be true. Your family's so active at church. Your father does all these volunteer activities. Oh, and your mother, I've never seen her say a bad word about anyone. And on and on and on and on. And that is the tactic of a family that is enmeshed, because they do everything to put forward the image that everything is fine, because in that way they keep the not fine behavior more hidden and less likely to be uncovered, because it flies in the face of the public persona of the family. If someone moves, even out of necessity, the whole family system comes crashing down. Okay? So if you move, and even though you may not want to move, but your arms give out because your back hurts so badly, you can watch at least part of the whole family system crumble. The person who moved is then punished by the family system. Often this person is also scapegoated or blamed for any and all flaws in the family pyramid. When someone chooses to not only move, but also tries to move away from the family system, they are often viciously attacked, verbally, emotionally, and sometimes physically. If the attack does not succeed in keeping the scapegoat in their place, the family system as a whole will often gang up on them mercilessly, using guilt, shame, and manipulation to lure the leaving member back into the fold where they belong, so the family unit can continue its dysfunction. You may have heard the term blood is thicker than water, or all we have in this world is our family. These terms are often used as manipulative ploys to convince abused or scapegoated family members to forsake their personal need for privacy or individuality and return to their role in the family system, so the family system can return to its usual cadence. If the leaving family member does not yield to their ploy and manipulation and decide to return to the family unit, if the leaving family member does yield to the ploys and return to the family unit, their homecoming is initially sweet and familiar, but it is only a matter of time before things return to the same way they were before. Okay, so initially you might be love bombed like crazy, but it will only be a matter of time before you are shoved back into your position in the pyramid and expected to sacrifice everything for the needs of the people who are in control of the family. And this is so important, and I really want to normalize this. It can often take multiple failed attempts over the course of decades before a family member who wishes to detach can permanently leave an enmeshed family system. It is the powerful gravitational pull, which is one of the main causes, if not the main cause, of intergenerational family dysfunction and intergenerational abuse. So I'll talk about that gravitational pull for a minute. When I was in grad school, enmeshment was described to us like a solar system. Okay. And if you're familiar with the solar system, there's one sun, and then all the other planets gravitate around the sun. And some of those planets have moons that gravitate around them. And the key word is gravitate. Okay. Because it's all set up as a gravitational pull. And it's scientifically set into place, okay, for the family, for the solar system, our solar system, to keep functioning. Every planet has to stay in its own orbit. Every planet has to stay in its own rotation. Because if they don't, then some planets, their gravitational orbit is going to be set out of place. Planets are going to smack into each other. It will create chaos. And an enmeshed family system is the same way. The sun is the few people, one person, maybe several people who are in control, and they expect everybody else to orbit around them in the exact way that the sun describes them to do it. Okay? So if one planet, if the Earth were to decide to move out of the solar system, everybody else is going to be thrown into chaos. And that's why family systems, enmeshed family systems, work so hard to get that family member who wants to leave to come back into the fold, because they want the family system to return to the way that it was. They don't want to have to adjust. And even more so, they don't want anybody to see that a planet left the system. Because planets don't leave healthy systems, right? People don't leave healthy families. People don't stop talking to healthy families. People don't accuse healthy families of bad things. And they very much want the whole world to see them as a happy, healthy family. How they are perceived and their reputation is everything to those who are in control of an enmeshed family system or an enmeshed organization. That's critical to them. And so if you, as a survivor, as an abuse victim, leave your family system, that's why they so desperately don't want you to do it, because they can't have the same orbit without you there. Can they adjust? Yes, and they will adjust, absolutely. But initially, they'll work really hard to get you back, because it's for their well-being. But they won't establish a new orbit for you. As much as they say they might, they will not. You're going to be put right back in the place that you were before. When I used to work in a domestic violence shelter, we were told that it takes an average of 8 times for a woman to leave a domestic violence marriage, a domestic violence interpersonal relationship, before she can leave for good. Because that pull back into the domestic violence marriage, the abusive marriage, is so strong. And so if you've tried multiple times to leave your enmeshed relationship and you get pulled back in, you are not alone. And so I don't want you to shame yourself, and I don't want you to feel badly if you have tried multiple times to leave your family, to leave your marriage, to leave your relationship, and you get pulled back in.
Bobby, I'm having some people saying, I can't believe I allowed this to happen. And I just want to echo what you just said right now. And that is, it's not your family's dysfunction, and the dysfunction going on in relationships is not all your fault.
No.
It is not. If you were raised in an enmeshed family of origin, there is no possible way you could have known that it was unhealthy. There's
Yeah.
no way that you could have known that it was unhealthy. Absolutely no way. And
No.
we just want to be very clear with that, you guys. This is not meant to shame you. We are wanting to reduce the stigma and normalize this for you a little bit so that you can see it from an outside perspective and recognize the traits that are unhealthy. And then we have 6 strategies for coping with this enmeshment. And we're hoping that this can be a tool, something that can be healthy for you and not shaming.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, Bobby, but I
No,
just
no, no.
wanted to
That's
make
critical. That's so
very
important.
clear.
And, you know, for those of us who are raised in enmeshed family systems, we are then, it's kind of set as normal in our heads. That's what we know. It may be a beast, but it's a beast we know and we recognize it. So unfortunately, that leaves us in a place where we are more vulnerable to enmeshed relationships as an adult. And we've talked before, Athena and I have talked before about re-victimization, about re-traumatization, and how survivors of childhood abuse are re-victimized at an alarming rate. And this is one of the reasons why. Because if you were raised in an enmeshed family system, you are not used to having needs of your own. You're not used to anyone wanting to meet any needs of your own. You're not used to having your own identity. You're not used to having your own emotions. I had a client just this last week describe to me a traumatic incident she had over the week. And I said, how do you feel? And she said, I don't know. And so I threw out a couple of emotions saying, how about this? She says, I don't know. She said, I never know what I'm feeling. I have no clue how I feel. That is a sign of someone raised in an enmeshed family. And we grow up to be an adults, and someone who comes along and says, hey, you know, and obviously they're not saying this out loud, but, you know, want to have an enmeshed relationship with me where you don't have an identity of your own? You're like, okay, I know that kind of relationship. I can do this. Yep, I'm all in. Obviously, that's not the thought process that goes along, but it's that groove that has been set in our brain because we were raised in an enmeshed family system. And so when someone offers the same kind of system to you, you're like, okay, I recognize this. And it's probably not conscious. I seriously doubt you're like, okay, I want another enmeshed relationship. Yes, sign me up. But your head goes, oh, okay, I know that. I can do this. And voila, we end up all over again in the same darn place that we've been trying so hard to get out of. So if that's you, please recognize that you were set up as a child. You were set up to fall into that trap. So please don't beat yourself up. That's, as Athena said, that's the opposite of what we want. We want to empower you. We want to say, okay, here's the information. Now take it and move forward with it. We want you to be aware. We want you to know what enmeshed relationships look like. And now we want to share these 6 strategies with you that will help you to both heal from an enmeshed family system or an enmeshed relationship, and it will also help you prevent becoming involved in another enmeshed relationship. Okay, so the first thing is become aware. You know, Athena and I have said this a million times, and we'll say it a million more. See it, stop it, change it. Okay, the first step is see it. You have to see the problem. You have to become aware of the enmeshment that operated in your childhood family or current relationships. It's hard to disentangle yourself from enmeshment until you see how you were entangled, right? It's like handing someone, you know, a tangle. In my head, we spent so much of my childhood fishing. You know, it'd be like my father chucking me a roll of twisted, you know, fishing line and saying, here, disentangle this, but keep your eyes closed, right?
Yeah.
No. We have to see it. You've got to look at it and figure out, how do you disentangle this? I mean, it's tempting just to cut the line and start over, but it doesn't always work. That kind of leaves you vulnerable for more enmeshment because you didn't figure out what happened the last time. So be aware. And the second one, and this is so important, and again, you've heard us talk about this, you've heard us harp on this, and you're going to hear it some more, I can guarantee, in some future episodes. Set healthy boundaries. Learn how to set healthy boundaries. Learn what a healthy boundary is. We did a video on healthy boundaries way back a couple of years ago. Go back and find that puppy and watch it and download the one page. So set healthy boundaries with those who wish to be enmeshed with you. And then sometimes even the harder part is to maintain those healthy boundaries.
That's the hardest part.
That is the hardest part, especially when you're newly trying to pull away from the family system and they have been thrown into chaos because you screwed up their orbit. Yep. And they're going to go, yeah, hey, we love you. What's wrong? Come back. You know, your place.
They'll lure you back. They'll do anything to get you back so that they can return to the cadence of their dysfunction.
Exactly. So that not only do we have to set the boundaries, but then we have to maintain them. And what will help with that maintaining is the next one. Focus on developing your independent identity. Okay? Ask, who am I separate from my family system? Because if you develop your independent identity, you will not want to give that up in order to go back into the toxic family system.
Song Warrior.
Back to the toxic. Yes, Dawn.
Dawn, Song Warrior, says, I didn't even know I had my own identity until my father died.
Yes. You know, so often I feel like a little parrot tonight because Athena and I have talked about this again also before. You know, they use within the abuse system the word recovery. And it doesn't fit for a lot of us because we have nothing to recover. We were abused from so young that we never had anything. We're not recovering anything. We're establishing something for the first time. So as Dawn mentions identity, yeah, we didn't have an identity before we were abused. So it's not about recovering our identity. It's about establishing an identity. And you will have so many survivors. You know, even for those of us, you know, we're 30, 40 years old and we're just recovering our memories and going into counseling. A part of our recovery is, who am I? What am I looking for? What do I want out of this life? You know, the things that most people did when they were back in their teens and their 20s, we're doing at our age because we never even realized that we didn't have an identity of our own. So if you're wondering what in the world your identity is and you're listening to this and you're going, how can I at 40 years old not know what my identity is? That's why. Because you were raised in such a dysfunctional family system that you weren't allowed to have one. If you have been scapegoated by your enmeshed family, recognize that you are not to blame for the family's lack of functionality. You are not to blame for the family's dysfunction. Kick the guilt and the shame to the curb. Okay? They will use the guilt and the shame to the 100th degree to try to get you, not only get you back into the family system, but to destroy you while you're outside of it, because you are a tremendous threat. And I want to emphasize that. The more powerful you become outside of the family system, the more you are a threat to them. Because you tell your truth, and your truth is different than the truth that they want to portray.
They were saying that we're getting a lot of stuff on the Twitter feed right now saying that their family likes to pretend everything's perfect and that they are not allowed to talk about the truth, and I said exactly the same thing, that enmeshed family units do not like truth tellers.
No,
They
it's
do not.
threatening.
Yeah.
It's absolutely threatening. I can remember, and I think I've mentioned this before, so if you've heard it before, forgive me, but I can remember the first year after I was no longer invited to participate in the family. And I can remember on Thanksgiving Day being alone by myself in another city and picturing in my head my abuser sitting at the family Thanksgiving table and just reeling from the fact that my family system consciously chose to want a pedophile at their Thanksgiving table rather than me. And I thought, how little value must I have to be less worthy than a pedophile? It blew my mind. And it made me feel, like a centimeter high, because to my family, I was worth less than a rapist. And it's demoralizing. It's absolutely demoralizing. But it wasn't my fault. My family so badly wanted to still pretend that everything was okay, that they were willing to avoid and deny what my abuser had done.
Bobby, did I ever tell you that happened to me on Thanksgiving a few years back?
No,
Oh my gosh. I might have just remembered it, but it was Thanksgiving. In fact, when you first mentioned that on a previous broadcast, I remembered it was Thanksgiving and I was at one of my abusers' houses for Thanksgiving. And obviously this is before I was establishing some healthy boundaries and I was still in people pleaser mode. But one of my main abusers started talking about my uncle who had molested me when I was 5. And I had already brought it to the attention of a few members of my family that he was an off-limit topic for me. We weren't allowed to talk about him because he molested me when I was 5, and he's basically messed with my head and ruined much of my life, because so much of the behavior that I have exuded for most of my life was due to being sexually abused. This is before I was having memories of being sexually exploited and so on and so forth. But I was told on Thanksgiving, Bobby, you never said anything, Athena. When did you tell me that? When did you tell us that, Athena? You never told us that.
Right.
I'm standing there in front of like 11 people, and I am just completely dumbfounded. And what I wanted to say, like, are you effing kidding me right now? Like, we sat down and had a 30-minute conversation.
Right.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Bobby, I know that I've said this to you previously, but the fact that you had to sit back and visualize your rapist abuser sitting around the Thanksgiving table with the entire family, and you were the one that was being ostracized and scapegoated and left out, you deserved so much more, Bobby. And I know that we've talked about this before, but it just bears repeating. You deserved so much more. It is preposterous and painful and horrible and wrong on so many levels that your family chose a rapist over you. And I'm happy that you're welcome. I'm happy that you're in our family. And
thank you. I can't begin to tell you how much more I choose this family, over my own. Do we have everything figured out? No. But you know what? We're honest.
Yeah. We're honest.
We're honest.
Yeah.
When I was a sophomore in high school, I left the Catholic school system because I found it to be so incredibly dysfunctional and so manipulative. Everybody, it was just like my family system. Everybody pretended they were great, pretended they were pious, pretended they were, wonderful, while at the time they were passing the hat in religion class in order to fund the keg party that they were having that weekend. And I couldn't stand that hypocrisy. Even though I didn't identify at that time that my dislike for hypocrisy came from my family system. And so I still, it blows my mind that I had the courage to do this, but I went and enrolled in the public school system. And I went to the public school that was about 6 blocks away from my house, which was, heaven forbid, had people of color and people of lower socioeconomic status and people who did drugs and people who carried knives and people who fought with one another. But you know what? They were honest. Nobody said, I'm a wonderful person and nothing bad ever happens here. And I was infinitely more comfortable in the public high school system because I knew what the dangers were and I could avoid them. But when you're in an enmeshed family where everybody pretends everything's okay, you don't know where the dangers are hiding. And you have to spend 24/7 on constant alert because you don't know when you're going to step on something and it's going to be a bear claw of a trap. So I will always choose an imperfect system where people acknowledge the imperfections. Then I will choose a system that says there's nothing wrong here. Don't look over here. There's nothing wrong. Because we are imperfect human beings and there's always something wrong.
Yeah.
Doesn't make us bad.
We're honest.
Exactly. Yeah. Boy, I tell you.
We're here every week telling you that we don't have it figured out and that we're healing and recovering and uncovering and discovering right next to you guys, week in and week out. We don't ever pretend to have it all figured out and silence you from telling your truth. Like, we want you to tell your truth and we want you to feel free to do so in this particular community.
Yes. And then, because last 2 bullet points here, because you are familiar with an enmeshed relationship system, you may be vulnerable to becoming involved in another. Learn the signs of unhealthy people and relationships to prevent that from happening. What is it? Safe People by Cloud & Townsend. Is that the book that we talk about a lot, Athena?
Yes, Boundaries and Safe People, both.
Okay, good. Both good. We encourage all men and women to develop a safe support system where you can receive the validation you deserve, as well as practice new and healthy relationship skills. Cultivating healthy relationships with other survivors is extremely healing. Ask us today about getting plugged into a free online safe support group, and you can click there and it will take you to the place that you need to go to sign up for that. But I'll tell you why that's so important, and we talked about this morning in chat. When you are alone and you're isolated and you're not connected with a support system, you are more vulnerable to being sucked back in to your dysfunctional family system. I'm trying to make all these pop-ups go away. Here we go. There you go. So when you have support, then your family system doesn't have the power that they would if you don't. So it's so important that you implement having a support system, that you implement establishing your independent identity, and that you maintain boundaries. All 3 of those will do an enormous amount of good in keeping you safe from being sucked back into that family system or into the marriage or the organization that is unhealthy. Is it a foolproof? No. Sometimes people still get lured back in, but remember, that happens to a lot of us, you know, and sometimes leaving that family system, leaving that enmeshed relationship is so painful, and we are so love bombed by the family system that we're leaving that we go back because the pain is so difficult to tolerate. And all of a sudden they're providing you with the love, which isn't really love because it's toxic and dysfunctional, that we have been craving our entire life. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm leaving. Why are you doing this now when I'm leaving? And it takes you back. So don't beat yourself up if it takes you a few tries to get out permanently. It's just the nature of the beast. So instead of beating yourself up, work on those 3 things, work on that bullet list of 6 things so that you can better inoculate yourself against the power of being pulled back into that unsafe family system. And we hope that you will include becoming part of our safe communities. We're not trying to sell you anything. They're all free, always will be free. We just have seen the magic of how powerful it is for people to connect in community with other survivors, where there is understanding. Nobody looks at you cross-eyed and says, I have no clue what in the world you're talking about. But your family always looks so perfect, I can't understand why you would leave them. There's no judgment, there's understanding, and there's a tremendous amount of support and compassion. Plus, it's an excellent place to practice healthy relationship skills and practice establishing your identity. Where if you make a mistake, everybody's not going to look at you and emotionally or verbally beat you up because you're the one that made the side of the pyramid tip over. There's no pyramid. Not only are there no pyramids in our communities, wow, but there's not people who are going to beat you up when you don't get it right. They're going to go, okay, that didn't work. Let's help you up. Let's try again. Practice. So what else are we getting, Athena? Are there any more comments or questions that people have?
Oh my goodness, there's so much. There's so much. Good night, Phoenix. We love you. There's a lot of people having light bulb moments and realizing that they never had a reality or an identity apart from their enmeshed family unit.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage you guys to be super duper duper kind to yourself. Be very gentle with yourself after this chat in particular. There was one tweet from Kalisha earlier, and the grieving continues. Grief can be one of the most painful parts of our recovery journey, but as we choose to hold a safe space for ourselves to grieve the things we never had, or the things that were stolen from us or taken from us, or grieve those relationships that we thought we had that we really didn't, as we begin to shine a light on them and realize, oh, that wasn't what I thought that it was. As we choose to hold a safe space for ourselves and grieve that, that is when you catapult forward in your recovery journey, and old behaviors no longer control your present life. Old behaviors and old choices and old things that sort of haunt you and feel like they're sort of in control, and, well, I've always just done that. Well, I always choose the bad boy, or I tend to choose those types of girlfriends that stomp on me and I'm a doormat. And the relationships that I have at work are ones where it's typically always the same. It's very similar to my childhood. As we choose to grieve what we never had or what we thought we had, those behaviors and those patterns break. Those patterns are no longer you start to recognize them. And I cannot recommend more highly the 2 books that Bobby mentioned while she was reading the one page. We've said this in so many episodes before, and we're going to say it again, and that is Boundaries by Townsend and Cloud, Safe People by Townsend and Cloud. And there is a book with a lavender cover. The names of the 2 authors are escaping me right now, but it is called Grief Recovery Handbook. And we're not affiliates with any of these people. These are just books that we know help people. And I'm telling you, that Grief Recovery Handbook it's a really thin book and it looks like an easy read, but it took me a year. Because when you are doing a grief timeline to everything traumatic that's ever happened to you in your life, dating all the way back to your very first memory, whether that was the loss of a pet or the death of a loved one or abuse or neglect or whatever, and you keep adding things to that timeline, and you're grieving those things, and you're giving them the proper attention that they deserve, then the pain and the maladaptive behaviors and unhealthy coping strategies no longer run out in front of us. We no longer seek to numb our pain. We actually deal with it, and we realize that it's terrifying, but we get through it. We don't go around it. We don't go under it. We don't go over it. We get through it. And then when you get through something super painful and you realize, oh my gosh, I didn't die, and I honestly thought I would die. I didn't think I could ever speak the words childhood sexual abuse. I was too afraid to even admit that I was sexually abused. I was too afraid to admit that my parents were abusive because they were such good people. Everybody loved my parents. The moment we choose to address those things that we don't think we can ever address, and grieve those things and give attention to those things that we don't think that we ever can, they don't rule our lives anymore. We develop an identity apart from where we've been. Our identity is no longer where we come from. Our identity is here and now, and it's us, and we deserve that. We deserve to have a reality apart from an unhealthy family unit. We deserve to have a reality and an identity apart from our family of origin, apart from the friends we keep or the job we have. We deserve to have a unique identity. We just do.
Well, and that's what healthy families promote, right?
Yeah, they do. Yes, Bobby. Yes, yes, yes. I can't tell you how many times I told my son, well, what do you want to do? Like, who are you? What does Jordan want? And I remember telling him, like, do you want to color your hair all different colors? Do you want to, who do you want to be? What do you want to do? Who do you want to hang out with? Like, who are you? You know, and embrace that.
Yeah.
And in our actions and in our words and in our thoughts and in our family units, creating that space where we give our children a voice and ask them, what do you think? I love to hear what you think. I love the person you are. I love the person you are becoming. I love the choices you make. I love the voice that you have. I love the decisions that you choose to make, the way that you embrace things with a whole heart and with the excitement for life. Like, just reminding our children that they're valuable just as they are, not because they're appendages of ours or they're an extension of us. Encouraging them to have their own individual thoughts and feelings and dreams and goals. That is the healthiest thing you could ever do for your children. And sadly, if you are watching this YouTube channel, you might not have had that. And that might be something that we might need to grieve. And grieving is painful. And it doesn't always happen in a healthy way. Like, you don't even realize that you're not grieving in a healthy way because you don't even realize you're grieving. You're just numbing, avoiding, or stuffing, and you don't realize that you're doing any of it. It's just your way of life. I literally have a client that is a daily marijuana smoker, and they have been for 20 years. They smoke marijuana every single day for 20 years. No judgment there. But when I ask this client, are you numbing, avoiding, or stuffing anything that you want to be dealing with regards to your child abuse? I don't think so. Let's talk about that a little bit further. You know, when we're numbing in any which way, whether it's through recreational drugs or alcohol or over-exercise or overeating or whatever, the list goes on and on and on of things that we can choose to do with our time so that we don't have to deal with the old stuff. Oh, but that's just in the past. I should just be past that by now. I should just be over it. Sometimes we're not over it. Sometimes we've never addressed it. Sometimes we've never stared it in the face.
Well, and when I hear people say that things like that, I'm like, whose voice is that? Who told you that? Because
Good question.
that's a learned response. That's something that someone has said to you that you learned.
You should just be past that by now. You should be over that. But
Exactly.
that's in the past. Like we
Right.
don't teach that to ourselves. That, like you said, that's a learned behavior. That's a learned response.
Yeah. So yeah, I like that one when people, I'm like, whose voice is that? It might be in your voice in your head, but that's something that somebody said to you that you probably heard multiple times. And I see that too with enmeshed family relationships with someone who has, spoken their truth, and heaven forbid they might want to speak their truth a second time. Somebody's like, yeah, we talked about that before. Sit down and shut up. We don't want to hear about it again. They might excuse you speaking your truth one time, but more than that is like, yeah, no, you're done. We've revoked your right to speak your truth, even though you never really had it in the first place. This is a tough one, because I think many of us grew up in enmeshed relationships because enmeshed families are the perfect soil in which to grow abuse, because enmeshed families are all about secrecy, and they're all about control and manipulation, and they're all about the needs of the few, in the ones who are not part of the few sacrifice their needs to meet the needs of those who are in control. And so it's so easy for children to get abused. It's so easy for spouses and partners to get abused. I watched a documentary this week on, I can't remember the name of the group, but it's the one where Warren Jeffs was the leader of a polygamist cult, and he had something like 69 wives. He's now in prison. And one of the victims said, they say it's all about religion, but it has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with sex and power. And this man was, and he still is in control of this group from prison. He calls people, and they tape his words and they play them. And he married girls who were as young as 12 years old as a 55, 60-year-old man.
I saw that. I didn't see the whole deal that you're talking about, the documentary, but I saw an ad. I saw like a commercial or like an advert or whatever for that.
Yeah.
Can I share a quote real quick from Jack and Simi's daughter?
Sure. Minute Maid?
Yes, aka Minute Maid. I want to just say that the most beautiful things in the entire world sometimes are taught to us by our children and are shared by our children. I know that I've learned a lot from my son, and I know, Bobby, you learned a lot from your son. And what aka Minute Maid shared was, I'm paraphrasing because it's back in my tweets somewhere, but she said, I never knew what a truly healthy relationship was until I was in one myself.
Yeah.
And I just want to end this portion of our broadcast before we transition into welcoming new people. I want to end it on that note, you guys. There is hope. There is hope that we will discover healthy relationships that are not enmeshed. There is hope. And a definition of a relationship that is not enmeshed is when you are encouraged to have your very own identity apart from the other people you're involved with. Your very own wants, your very own needs, your very own likes and dislikes, your very own opinions, your very own space, apart from the people that you're around. That's not enmeshed. That's actually healthy.
Yep. Yes.
So I'm just grateful that Minute Maid shared that, because I think that sometimes we talk so much about like what abuse and dysfunction looks like. It's really awesome sometimes to sort of shine that flashlight on the good and what something healthy does look like. And you don't realize it's healthy until you're like, wow, I'm in this and this is healthy. This is good.
Yeah.
So well said, well done. Yeah. Did you want to say anything to everybody that's here, like our normals that are here every single week before we transition into welcoming new people?
You know, we had a couple people say tonight on the Twitter stream that they, you know, really had some awesome light bulbs. And I'm so amazed every week that we come and we share information and it has an impact on more than just Athena and I. So, so I'm so glad if this was helpful for some of you, if it shined a light on something that you'd never seen, and know that we have tremendous hope and belief that things can get better for each of you. And so we encourage you to join in with us on more Twitter chats or on one of our Facebook groups and join in with us. There's more magic, and it happens in this community all the time. So thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. We appreciate you. Tammy at Sweet and Shy 1973 says, once you experience a healthy relationship, you won't settle for anything less. You will recognize enmeshment and codependency.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage each and every one of you who are here with us every week. And I just want to thank you for letting us know that you are experiencing this Twitter chat / live stream video. You're experiencing this community in all that it was intended to be, and that is a safe space to come and heal and learn healthy interpersonal skills and healthy relationship skills, healthy communication, what it looks like to function in the world apart from our abuse, because we are not what happened to us. I don't care if you were sexually abused from birth until you were 40. If you are here on this channel and you're beginning your recovery journey, you are welcome here with us, and that you are not what happened to you. It does not define you. Your abuse does not define you. There is hope, and there are healthy people out there that are healing and that want to encourage you and cheer you on in this recovery journey. So thank you for being here every single week with us, you guys. We really appreciate you. Right now, we are going to transition for the next 2 to 3 minutes to welcome new people, let you know how to get in touch with us personally, how to get welcomed into one of our online secret safe support groups. We have several. We have some that are for women only. We have one that's co-ed for men and women. We have a group for the LGBTQ+ community. We also have a group specifically for narcissistic abuse, and we will be starting a group for people living with chronic illness, currently living with autoimmune disease or chronic illness as a result of being abused as a child, along with a group for loved ones and family members of people who are adult survivors of childhood abuse, specifically childhood sexual abuse, and then a group also that will be faith-based, where people who want to pray and encourage one another in their faith. We have multiple groups that are going to be starting up in the new year in 2017. So just here we are for the next couple minutes, and thank you so much for being here every single week. We appreciate each and every one of you. Take it away, Bobby.
Okay. Let's talk about ways to connect with us. I'm going to make this bigger. If you would like to be in contact with Athena or I'm going to make it even bigger. Whoa, too big. Okay. Here are our email addresses. I am BobbyLParish@gmail.com. Athena is Athena Moberg speaking @gmail.com. And our joint email address is nomoreshameproject@gmail.com. My Twitter handle is Bobby L. Parish. And Athena's Twitter handle is Athena Moberg. And Trauma Recovery University has a Twitter handle as well, and that's Trauma Recovery U. You can watch all of our video episodes on YouTube, Roku TV, or Google+. And that just to find those, go to those apps or those channels and just do a search for Trauma Recovery University, and we should pop right up. If you would like to follow us or interact with us on Facebook, here are our Facebook URLs down here in the lower left corner. Trauma Recovery University has a page. My professional page is Bobby Parrish Coaching and Consulting. My personal page is Bobby Parrish. Athena's professional page is Athena Moberg Speaking, and her personal page is Dawn Athena Moberg. You can also watch all of our broadcasts live and recorded 24/7, 365 at bit.ly/trauma recovery U. And those capitals matter. So, oops, that's not where I want to be. Okay, so now we want to share with you how you can connect with the various communities that we have. All of them, oops, guess not with that page, I won't. Sorry, I need to tap dance here while I move over into the other page I want to show you. Wow. We're going to talk about the different activities and community services that we offer. All of them are free. All of them always will be free, no cost. Just come and join us. And we have, as Athena mentioned before, we have 3 Twitter chats every week. The first is on Monday. That is CSAQT, Childhood Sexual Abuse Question Time. It's at 10 o'clock Pacific Time, 6 p.m. In the UK. And then there is, if you're watching us live right now, you're participating in the second Twitter chat interactive video experience of the week that uses the hashtag No More Shame. It's at 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 Eastern in the US, and it's at 2 o'clock in the morning on Tuesdays in the UK. And then Tuesday evening is the original sex abuse chat that was started by myself and Rachel Thompson. It is at 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 Eastern, and Wednesday at 2 o'clock in the morning. If you would like to join one of our Facebook groups, we ask that you follow this simple 4-step process. It is the easiest and quickest way to get plugged into one of our support groups. And we ask that you first go and like the Trauma Recovery University page. Then you send friend requests to Athena and I. We ask that you send them to both of us because one or other of us will be able to get back to you more quickly. Quicker. There we go. And then once we have accepted your friend request, send a message to us saying something like, I'd like to heal in safe community. I'd like to join one of your support groups. And then we will get back to you. We might ask you a few questions if we don't know you, just to make sure that you are safe. We don't want to let any predators into our groups. And then we will get you plugged in and we will post an introduction to you in the groups so others can help to welcome you in. And that is all she wrote. Oops. I keep clicking on the wrong page. There we go. So that's it.
Awesome. I was just saying good night to everybody. Oh, Kalisha posted a link to the book. Oh, I can't see it. Something's up with my Twitter, Kalisha. Sorry about that. I will double check that link a little bit later. Guys, I just want to echo everything that Bobby said earlier. And thank you, Bobby, for going through those the screen shares. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Bobby and I appreciate you guys very much. And we are grateful that you are messaging us on Twitter and Facebook and emails. And for the voice messages, I received a whole bunch of different, a whole bunch of voice SpeakPipe messages from my website just today. And so if that was you, I haven't responded to you yet, and I am sorry. And we've been getting a lot of emails from you guys, and thank you for letting us know you're receiving the resources and that you are finding them helpful. And thank you for suggesting topics. Next week, we are discussing the very delicate topic of arousal during childhood sexual abuse. It's our body's biological response It is not any arousal that you experienced during your childhood sexual abuse does not mean that you asked for it. It does not mean that you wanted it. It does not mean that it was something you enjoyed. You were being sexually abused. Your body may have been experiencing pleasure or arousal biologically, but if you were in an abusive situation, which childhood sexual abuse is abuse, it is not something that is agreed to or consensual. If you are a child, you are not of the age of consent. Even if you are, oh, but I was a teenager, regardless, it's childhood sexual abuse. And whether or not your body enjoyed it or not, we are going to delve into this topic of the body's biological response to sex and how that relates to childhood sexual abuse and the mind muckery that goes on with shame and guilt that we carry for years and years and decades and decades and decades, that we deserved it, we wanted it, we liked it, and then we perpetuate this cycle. And we're going to pull that topic apart. And it's a delicate topic. It's going to be quite triggering for some people. So we want to remind you ahead of time, we're giving you a week's notice to practice excellent self-care. If you have a calming box that has peppermint candies or some aromatherapy or some stim toys or anything that will help you to remain calm, a bracelet that you like, something that helps you to stay grounded, your favorite beverage, whatever it might be, just so that you don't get triggered, or just skip next week altogether until you're ready for the topic. Just skip it. And then, Bobby,
yes.
Is it okay? I wanted to ask you real quick. I know that Maggie is already gone for the evening. We received 2 requests for the topic of borderline personality disorder. If we would talk about that topic and pull it apart as it relates to childhood sexual abuse. And I figured we could also sort of touch on like misdiagnoses,
Sure.
which we already talked about misdiagnosis, but I mean, CPTSD and borderline, they look alike, and then also bipolar. And like, I thought maybe it would be good for us to cover borderline because we never covered borderline.
That sounds great. Yes, definitely.
So
I like it.
Wonderful. Okay, so a week from next week. So tonight is on the 10th of October, we are going to discuss biological response to sex during childhood sexual abuse or arousal during childhood sexual abuse. And on the 17th of October, we will be discussing borderline personality disorder and how it's related to childhood sexual abuse, and then some other things that it could sort of be it could be wandering around, other things that could be a diagnosis if you've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, etc. We'll go through the whole topic. So if you have a suggestion for a topic that we have not yet covered, I would love for you to email us. Bobby and I love to receive your emails. We love to get your recommendations, and we want to thank you for letting us know that you're receiving the resources. Did you want to say bye to everybody?
Good night, everyone. Again, thank you so much for being here with us. We love to interact with you, and we love to share what we've learned. So hopefully you have a simpler and smoother recovery.
Yeah, we want you to not have to take 15, 20, 30 years recovering. We would love for you to have a much shorter and less painful recovery journey than we've had and feel much more supported, which is why we've created a safe community for you. So can't wait to interact with you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Athena Moberg, and this is Bobby Farish, and we love bringing you everything you need for healthy, informed trauma recovery. Bye, everyone.